It was freezing on the corner of West Monroe Street. Chicago winds didn't care who you were. They bit through skin, stung the eyes, and made sure everyone kept walking. No one stopped for anyone, not for a stranger, not for a kid, especially not for a black kid. 12-year-old Marcus sat on the curb, hugging his knees under an oversized hoodie that barely kept out the cold. His bike, a mess of rust, duct tape, and hope, leaned against a trash can beside him. He was trying to fix the chain again, fingers numb, when he heard the screech. He looked up. A silver SUV came flying through the intersection. Tires skidded. Horns blared. And then came the sound. A sickening thud. A white traffic officer, standing in the middle of the street directing cars, was hit hard. His body flipped, spun, and slammed against the pavement. People gasped. A woman screamed. Phones came out like reflexes. But no one moved. The officer wasn't getting up. Marcus froze. He could hear his heartbeat louder than the sirens in the distance. His instinct said to run, but something else pulled at him. He looked at his hands. Greasy, brown, small. The kind that got judged before they got asked. He imagined it. The headlines, the angles. Black boy seen near downed officer. That's all it would take. Nobody would care he was helping. They'd just see a hoodie, black skin, and blood. But still, the cop wasn't moving. Blood began pooling near his arm. Marcus swallowed hard. He could feel the weight of 100 eyes from the sidewalk. But none of them stepped forward. Not one. He tightened his grip on his mother's scarf tucked inside his hoodie pocket. It still smelled like lavender and home, even after all this time. And then he did it. He dropped his bike, ran across the crosswalk, and knelt beside the officer. A woman yelled something behind him. A man shouted, "Hey, get away from him!" He didn't listen. The officer was barely breathing. His face was pale. His arm bent wrong. Marcus pulled the red scarf from his pocket, wrapped it tightly around the bleeding wound, and whispered, "Hold on. Please." No one helped. No one came close. He knew how this looked. A black boy touching a white cop. But he kept going anyway. Because if he didn't, no one would. Marcus didn't sleep much. Not because he wasn't tired. He was always tired. But because Chicago never really went quiet. Even at night, the city buzzed. Cars, sirens, arguments behind thin apartment walls. Some nights, he curled up behind the old laundromat 2 blocks from Jackson Avenue. Other nights, under the bridge near the bus station. He moved when he had to. Cold cement was better than cold stairs. He hadn't seen his mother in 2 years. Not since the hit and run. They said they never found the driver. He didn't believe that. He believed they just stopped looking. Because she was black. Because she was poor. Because she worked 3 jobs and still couldn't afford rent. Since then, he stopped trusting what people said they'd do. The city never offered much except looks of suspicion. When he tried to use a bathroom, they told him it was for customers only. When he asked for water, people clutched their bags tighter. When he asked a man for the time once, the guy crossed the street. But Marcus had learned how to make it work. He fixed bikes for cash, dug through junk piles for parts. One time, he sold a working radio he built from scrap for $20. That lasted a week. 4 days, if he bought food twice. He carried his life in a backpack, a toothbrush, 2 t-shirts, and the scarf his mom knitted the winter before she died. It was red, slightly faded now, but he never let it go. It stayed in the deepest pocket, next to the photo of her in her nurse scrubs, smiling like she hadn't worked a double shift the night before. He didn't go to school. He didn't talk to social workers. Last time he tried, they stuck him in a shelter with broken locks and too many fists. He left on the third night, when an older kid tried to steal his shoes. Since then, he kept to himself. He didn't need anyone. At least, that's what he told himself. But sometimes, late at night, when everything slowed down and the wind dipped low, he'd whisper into the dark, "You still up there, Ma?" And somewhere deep inside, he hoped she was. The streets near downtown were already starting to swell with people. Office workers in trench coats dodged puddles. Delivery vans honked through intersections. Somewhere, a saxophone tried to compete with the traffic, but no one noticed the blood still on Marcus's hands. He knelt beside the officer, tightening the scarf as best he could. The man's arm was twisted, blood gushing from the elbow. The wound was deep. Marcus had never seen that much blood before. Still, nobody helped. Phones were out. People stood frozen like mannequins. Some whispered. Others just filmed. And then someone shouted, "Hey, what's that kid doing?" Marcus looked up. 2 police officers were pushing through the crowd. One of them, a tall white man with a stiff jaw and cold eyes, locked onto Marcus immediately. His gaze went straight from the scarf to Marcus's hoodie, to the color of his skin. "Step away from him." "Now," the officer barked. Marcus raised his hands. "I was just trying to stop the bleeding." The other cop, younger and Hispanic-looking, seemed more unsure. His eyes landed on the red scarf soaked in blood, still tied tight. He didn't say anything. "You touch him?" the older cop asked, already reaching for his radio. "I helped him," Marcus said quietly. "He was bleeding out. No one else did anything." The officer ignored the words. His eyes scanned Marcus like a scanner looking for a crime that hadn't been committed yet. "What's your name?" "Marcus." "Last name?" I don't got one, you'd know." "Where do you live?" He didn't answer. That was the moment the officer's jaw tightened. The younger cop finally stepped forward. "Sir, the tourniquet might have helped slow the bleeding," he said to the medic kneeling beside the cop's body. The medic glanced up. "Yeah, could have bought him time." "Who tied it?" The older officer nodded toward Marcus, his voice flat. "Says he did." The medic gave a brief look of approval. "Good instincts, kid." But Marcus didn't feel good. He felt surrounded. He felt small. He felt the weight of every stare, every silent accusation. His mother's scarf was now sealed in a plastic evidence bag, blood-soaked, handled like a weapon. One of the techs started snapping photos of him from the side, then the back. Another officer whispered something about chain of custody. Marcus stood still, heart pounding. "I didn't do anything wrong." The older cop didn't blink. "Then you've got nothing to worry about." But Marcus knew that wasn't true. He had seen this before. Right skin, wrong place. Someone always paid. And this time, it might be him. He stood frozen on the sidewalk while the crowd stared in silence. The older officer had cuffed him without a single question that sounded like a question. It wasn't a conversation. It was a decision. "Turn around," he had said. "I didn't do anything," Marcus had replied, eyes wide. "Then you've got nothing to hide," came the answer. Click, click. Just like that, the boy who had tried to save a life was treated like a criminal. A woman nearby whispered, "They're arresting him?" Another voice added, "That can't be right. He's just a kid." But no one stepped forward. Not one hand lifted to stop it. Not one voice raised above a whisper. Just murmurs and phones. faces blinking behind screens, spectators of injustice. As they walked him toward the squad car, Marcus could barely breathe. The flashing blue and red lights made the street feel like a circus. Only no one was laughing. The scarf, his mother's scarf, was now in a bag, being passed from hand to hand like tainted evidence. Marcus looked at it once, then lowered his head. He didn't resist. He didn't shout. He'd learned long ago. Black boys who raise their voices get hurt. Or worse, they didn't get heard. They got handled. In the back of the squad car, the silence hit harder than the cuffs. His chest burned with questions no one would let him ask. Why did helping feel like a crime? Why was saving someone's life not enough? He thought of his mother again. Her voice used to be the only one that mattered. She used to braid his hair in the mornings and say things like, "Don't let this world tell you who you are." But the world didn't ask. It decided. And today, it decided that a black boy kneeling beside a white cop was suspicious. At the precinct, they didn't treat him like a witness. They didn't offer water or a seat. They took his hoodie, his shoes, his name, barely, wrote down everything he said as if it were a story they'd already heard before. They didn't tell him if the officer had survived. They didn't ask what really happened. They just sat him down in a cold, gray room, 4 blank walls, and a flickering light overhead. He sat there, staring at the table, feeling smaller by the second. No one believed him. And worst of all, no one seemed to care. They saw his skin, his silence, and his scarf soaked in blood. And that was all they needed. The holding cell smelled like metal and bleach. Cold bench, colder air. Marcus sat still, arms folded, eyes vacant. The cuffs were off now, but the sting around his wrists remained like a warning. Don't forget what you are. No one had spoken to him for over an hour. No lawyer, no guardian. Just quiet footsteps, and officers walking past like he wasn't even there. Like he was just background noise in their building. They'd taken everything, his hoodie, his name, even his scarf. A tech had bagged it like a murder weapon. The only thing his mother left him now sat inside a locker somewhere, stripped of meaning. He thought about the officer again, whether he'd made it, whether the scarf had helped. He had tied it as tight as he could. He remembered the feel of the blood soaking through, the officer's weak breathing, the way the crowd just watched. He replayed every moment, trying to find the mistake. There wasn't one. He did everything right. And still, here he was. Footsteps echoed again. The door opened. A woman in a tan coat stepped in, holding a clipboard. Her badge said, Detective R. Hale. She didn't sit, just leaned against the wall, watching him like she was still deciding what he was. "Marcus, right?" she asked. He nodded. "You know why you're here?" "I saved him," he said flatly. "I've read the report," she replied. "You came to the outpost with blood on your hands. You handed over the scarf. You told them a cop got hit by a car." "I didn't hit him," Marcus said. "I was across the street. I saw it. Then I helped." "There's a problem," she said, flipping a page. "No security footage shows the accident, only the aftermath. You, with him, bloody." He stared at her. "You think I would hurt someone and then run to tell you?" She paused. Something in her face softened, but only a little. "I didn't say that," she replied, "but I'm not the only one asking questions." His jaw tightened. "Is he alive?" She hesitated. "He's in surgery. Critical condition. They're trying." Marcus leaned back against the wall, the weight of it crashing down. So this was it. He helped, he told the truth, and somehow it still wasn't enough. Detective Moran lay in a white hospital bed, tubes in his arm, chest bandaged, one eye swollen shut. The hit had nearly killed him. His pulse had dipped twice in surgery. The nurses called it a miracle he made it through. No one expected him to wake up before morning. But just past 5 a.m. his fingers twitched. A nurse noticed. She stepped closer, leaned down gently. "Detective? Can you hear me?" He blinked, slow. His lips parted. The tube made it hard to speak, so she handed him a small pad and pen. His hand shook as he wrote. The first word was hard to read, but the second, clear. "Boy." The nurse blinked. "Boy," she repeated. He nodded, urgent now, tapped the notepad again. "He helped me." She hesitated. "They brought in a suspect," she said quietly. "A kid." Moran's grip tightened around the pen. He wrote again. "He saved me." 15 minutes later, that note reached the precinct. It passed from nurse to supervisor, from supervisor to administrator, and landed directly in Detective Hale's inbox. She didn't stop to finish her coffee. She grabbed her keys and ran. Marcus hadn't moved from the bench when the holding cell door burst open. Hale was out of breath, holding a printout. "He woke up," she said, almost surprised herself. Marcus looked up slowly, unsure whether it was another trick. "He wrote this," she said, holding out the paper. "Said you didn't hurt him. Said you saved his life." The words didn't land at first. It didn't feel real. "What?" he whispered. "You're not under arrest anymore." She unlocked the cell herself. Marcus stood up slowly. No smile, no celebration. Just disbelief. "So, they believe me now?" "He believes you," she said. "And that's what matters." She offered him back his shoes, his hoodie, even the scarf. The blood had dried, but the hurt hadn't. He didn't ask for an apology. He just walked out of the cell, hands in his sleeves, and said nothing at all. Because in his world, being believed was a luxury. And today, it came too late. By noon, the city had already changed its tune. Someone at the hospital leaked the story. A nurse, maybe. Maybe the detective herself. But it didn't matter who. The words spread fast. "Cop says black homeless kid saved his life, but cops arrested him anyway." It hit every feed. Twitter, local news, Facebook Reels. Even the big outlets picked it up before sunset. They posted the photo of Marcus, taken from behind the glass of a squad car. Eyes down, hands cuffed. The headline called him the boy who stayed. The mayor called a press conference, said it was a regrettable misunderstanding, promised an internal review, said training would be updated. The police chief said Marcus showed courage beyond his years, offered to frame the scarf. Marcus said no. 3 days later, he stood on the city hall steps in a suit that didn't quite fit. The shoes were new, too stiff. The crowd clapped when they said his name, but he didn't smile. He just stood there, thinking about the sidewalk, the scarf, the blood, the way no one had helped until it was almost too late. The mayor said, "Courage comes in many forms. Today, it came in the shape of a boy." Marcus didn't believe that. Courage, for him, was never optional. It was survival. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, he sat alone on the steps outside City Hall. The crowd was gone. The cameras packed up. Detective Hale walked up beside him and handed him a soda. "You did good today," she said. "I didn't like the speeches," he replied. "You weren't there to impress them." He looked out at the street, the passing cars, the people pretending not to notice. "So, what happens now?" "You'll have options," she said. "I'll make sure of it. You're not going back to the street tonight." He nodded, eyes still distant. "Do you think they'll forget me?" She was quiet a moment. "Maybe," she said. "But now you know who you are. They can't take that." And for the first time, Marcus believed her, even if only a little.